Good morning, everybody. This is Watson Michael from Ceylon Institute of English and Leadership. And today we have with us Dr. Ravi Fernando. So Dr. Ravi Fernando. So we're going to ask a lot of questions from him, so I'm going to give you a brief introduction about Dr. Ravi Fernando. Dr. Ravi Fernando, he's an alumni of the University of Cambridge, having completed a postgraduate certificate in sustainable business in 2008 and a Master of Studies in Sustainability Leadership in 2014. He holds a Doctor of Business Administration degree from the European Business School in Switzerland 2016. At the INSEAD Business School, France, he completed both a Diploma in International Management and the Advanced Management Program. He is an executive resident at the INSEAD Business School. Between 2010 to 2021, he has an MBA from the University of Colombo and is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing. In 2017, he created the ILA Future Directors Program for the Institute of Directors of Luxembourg, which set the foundation for the INSEAD Aspiring Director Program in 2018. In April 2020, he created the 21st Century Board Leadership Model Masterclass for the Institute of Directors of Luxembourg and Global Strategic Corporate Sustainability Private Limited. In 2021 July, commenced teaching in the INSEAD Advanced Strategy for Directors Program. In 2010, he received a US copyright for his work at Cambridge University for the concept of strategic corporate sustainability. In 2015, he published Strategic Corporate Sustainability, 7 Imperatives for Sustainable Business, based on his work at Cambridge University. In June 2020, he obtained a US copyright for the 21st Century Board Leadership Model. He also created the 21st Century Board Leadership Model Masterclass with Raymond Shadak of Luxembourg to build a cadre of 21st century leaders. He is the current Chairman CEO of Global Strategic Corporate Sustainability Private Limited, which operates in Luxembourg, Vietnam, and Sri Lanka. His career with multinationals spanned between 1981 to 2007 with Unilever, Reckitt Benckiser, SmithKline, Beacom International, covering Africa, Middle East, and Asia in CEO business development positions. He was the first CEO of the Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology between 2008 and 2011, and operations director of the Malaysia Blue Ocean Strategy Institute from 2011 to 2016. He was the UN Global Compact focal point between 2007 to 2011 and set up the UNGC Sri Lanka Network. He serves on the Sri Lanka Sustainable Development Council since February 2021. He serves on the boards of many multinational corporations, including LOLC Holdings, Ceylon Graphene Technologies Limited, Aiken Spence Plantations, Habitat for Humanity, UN Global Compact Sri Lanka, Ceylon Asset Management, and Global Strategic Corporate Sustainability Private Limited. In September 2007, he won Global Strategy Leadership Award presented to him by Professor Rene Maubon of INSEAD at the World Strategy Summit in Mumbai. In February 2020, he won the World CSR Leadership Award. So it's such an honor to have with us today Dr. Ravi Fernando, and we have a few questions for him. So we are so delighted to have you at Ceylon Institute of English and Leadership, Doctor. So I want to ask you the first question, actually. So one of the most important initiatives is the creation and the launch of the 21st Century Board Leadership Model Masterclass. So if you could let us know more about that, Dr. Fernando.
Okay, very good morning, Michael, and to all those watching this interview, especially those in Michael's Institute for English and Leadership. And it's appropriate that our first question is about leadership, because one of the reasons that I decided to create this model was influenced by a book I read during the COVID lockdown. The book is titled 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. So that's the book. 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. And this book, as I read it, I began to understand that the kind of challenges leaders will face in the 21st century are very different to the challenges they have faced before that. However, I also realized that in terms of training people for 21st century leadership, when I look at all the programs out there, which are available in universities, MBA programs, Institute of Director programs, governance programs, that none of them were addressing the 21 lessons for the 21st century. So what I did first was to look at these 21 lessons and cluster them under 6 topics. 6 topics which I believe are 21st century topics. And the 6 topics are, we start with 3 emergencies, because the world is facing what I would like to call 3 triple bottom line emergencies. The first emergency is the climate emergency. And sadly, 90% of board directors and national directors are virtually ignorant about it and are making decisions for nations and businesses not knowing what is happening with the climate emergency. And that is a very key topic in this book, in the 21st century book on 21 lessons. 21st century. The second emergency I talk about is social. Now, why am I talking of health and social emergency as one emergency? Because whenever you have a health emergency, that emergency translates to a social emergency. If anyone is out of work because of a health issue, the next thing is the entire family's income gets affected. Then you have a social emergency. So health and social emergencies are things that we are facing today. And of the year, and became full by 2020, and is continuing to yet be a crisis in the world, demonstrated how ill-prepared boards and national leaders and business leaders are to face a sudden pandemic. And this clearly needs to be addressed in the future. So that is the second emergency, health and social. Third one is when you have a climate emergency, which most nations and companies ignore, and that is coupled with a health and social emergency, you end up with an economic emergency. Lots of people think that economic emergencies happen in isolation. That is not true. Economic emergencies happen when you end up having a health emergency, a social emergency, and a climate emergency all together, and then the end result is an economic emergency. So in the 21st century model, we first put down the 3 emergencies. Then one of the things that I have been studying for a long time is triple bottom line. So it was easy for me to put those 3 emergencies together. But as I read this book, I realized there are many things that don't fall into the triple bottom line. And I needed to create 3 other headings to capture a 360-degree model. And then the first new model I created was one of 3 disruptors. So there are emergencies and there are disruptors. The 3 disruptors that are disrupting nations, businesses, in a very unplanned for manner. Once again, most leaders at national level and business are unsighted about these issues, and these issues are not taught in any business school, any course, or in any board leadership course. Wow. So the disruptors are, number 1 is technology disruption. What we have to realize is, even if you are a very strong triple bottom line leader, if you ignore what I call the disruptors, your company and your nation will suffer. So technology disruption is a very important area. And we are now seeing the world of technology rising at 100 miles per hour. Artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, 3D printing, precision agriculture, robotics, the IoT, Internet of Things. The world has comprehensively changed, and companies can be, and nations can be completely left behind if they ignore technology disruption. And as you mentioned in introducing me, thank you for that kind introduction.
Sure.
I was the first head of the Nanotechnology Institute of Sri Lanka, and I wanted to create a world-class institute. I've spent almost 18 to 20 years of my life out of Sri Lanka. So I think most of you all know about Sri Lanka much more than I do. I have been working internationally most of my career. So this was a challenge I got to set up the institute. And I wanted to set up a world-class institute that is second to none. And I created this institute, set it up, and I'm proud to say we are in the forefront of one of the most important new technologies in the world at the Institute of Nanotechnology in Sri Lanka in graphene water desalination. Graphene, Sri Lanka is blessed with the world's purest graphite. 99.8% pure graphite Sri Lanka has. No other country in the world has it. And all we have done, like tea, rubber, coconut, and everything else, we have just put it into gunny bags and sold it to the world for gunny bag prices. I was determined to make sure that we avoid this commodity trap that Sri Lanka has suffered for 73 years. And because we have suffered this trap for 73 years since independence, most Sri Lankans aren't enjoying the real economic benefits of the natural resources we are blessed with. We are simply happy to get commodity prices for everything. Even tea, after 150 or 5 years or something of Ceylon tea, only 2 or 3% is exported in branded form that bring real money to the country. Everything else is in commodity form. So Sri Lanka as a nation has suffered from a commodity mindset in terms of leadership and in terms of strategy. So the first disruptor is technology. Technology is a great disruptor. The second disruptor I realized that people don't talk about much, especially in business schools and business strategy, is what I call geopolitical disruption. And geopolitics used to be a subject that only national leaders were worried about. But having worked internationally for nearly 20 years in world-class multinationals, I realized that geopolitics can disrupt any business that is a multinational or a transnational or an international business, because a decision taken by a nation in terms of its foreign policy can completely disrupt a business. Just as we saw Donald Trump when he was president of the US, he took a decision, lots of decisions against China, and that disrupted big companies like TikTok, like Huawei, just one morning based on his geopolitical leaning. So geopolitics disrupts businesses, and we need to teach 21st century leaders geopolitics. So that's the second module in the disruptors. And the last module in this 6-module series is what I call governance disruption. Now, what is governance disruption? A lot of people, when you talk about the word governance in businesses and even in nations, refer to what is known as ESG, environmental issues, social issues, and governance issues. Once again, I think that model is wrong, because these are not the only 3 governance issues, and governance is not an independent item. Governance, you can have governance issues to do with all 3 of the triple bottom line. So I realized that governance is a totally misunderstood word in the world. And I created what I call a 2 ESG model for governance. And 2 ESG means there is environmental governance issues, So what is an example of that? If companies are quite happy to pollute the planet using single-use plastics, that is an example of a environmental governance compromise. If a company ignores profitability and economic profit and starts cooking the books and putting numbers into their balance sheets and into their P&Ls and into their financial reporting, which are lies, that is a governance issue to do with economic profit.
Okay.
The third governance issue is to do. So many companies don't realize that there are governance issues to do with people. So when a world leader says, I am going to open the country up for the economic benefit of our country and our GDP growth and sacrifices lives, when he does that, that is a governance issue to do with people. So governance issues, governance is not an independent item. There are governance issues to do with economic governance, environmental governance, and social/people governance. So the last module we teach is a governance strategy to put people and planet before profit. People and planet before profit. So in a very quick way, the 21st Century Board Leadership Model Masterclass has 6 modules, 3 emergencies at the top: climate, health and social, and economic; 3 disruptors: geopolitical, technological, and governance issues. And what we try to do in this module is to help future business leaders understand that when they build future strategy, they must look at it through this entire module and the 6 modules. And we give everyone a strategy template so that they can create for every one of these 6 modules a strategy that is relevant to their business and how they interact in the world. So, Michael, this is a bit of a windy explanation of what I consider to be a world-class module. And I'm very humbled and thrilled that this module is now the most important module that the Institute of Directors of Luxembourg teach to their European directors. Sri Lanka is about to launch this on the 20th of July by the Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. So I have agreed to do 1 session for Sri Lanka every year, 1 session. And generally it's a 7-week course. And in September this year, a company in Ireland has now taken the exclusive rights to this program, and will be launching it in Ireland and England in September. So a small course that we created for Luxembourg has now slowly become a world-class course. And the reason I'm very confident this is going to do well is because no business school, no MBA program, no director's program covers these 6 topics in 1 course.
Wow, amazing.
So you can ask me any questions you have on these 6 modules. You're most welcome to do so.
Sure.
And what I'm doing is creating 21st century leaders. So any questions on the module? So we have a US copyright.
Sure. I mean, it's brilliant insights, Dr. Fernando, because I mean, certain things which you said, I was also not aware, and I mean, it's a proud achievement. I mean, thank you so much. You're contributing. So, I mean, it's quite good. I mean, we're proud from Sri Lanka. You're contributing a lot for this, and it's on a global scale. I mean, it's quite great. Thank you very much, Dr. Fernando. And we have another question about tourism. So, like Costa Rica, can Sri Lanka adapt to promote sustainable tourism? And like post-COVID, how we can improve? And there are many Sri Lankans who are not aware of domestic tourism in the country.
Excellent. So as you know, Michael, one of the areas that have suffered, one industry that has suffered more than all industries in the world today is the global tourism, hospitality, and travel industry. And I'm aware that you have worked in that industry and you know that industry much better than I do. And this sector has got completely devastated in the world because for nearly a year, people weren't able to travel anymore because tourism counts on travel, both domestic and international. But of course, it's the international travel that brings the real dollars to any nation.
Yes.
And you're aware that the tourism industry globally is the world's biggest industry.
Yes.
It's over a $5 to $6 trillion industry. It's bigger than any other industry because it also has so many support industries that all contribute to the global tourism industry. And I think if I remember right, the global tourism figure is about 1.2 billion people. That means 1.2 billion people in the world are traveling from one country to another or traveling within a country. And that is in a population of 7.8 billion people, almost 1 in 7 people in the world is a tourist. Now, that is why the tourism industry is the biggest single industry in the world. Just imagine if that figure became 2 people in 7 or 2 people in 8. Then there is no chance even catching it. However, this industry has got completely shut down. People cannot travel anymore. People cannot do any of this anymore. Now, wherever people are beginning to open up countries, I can see recently I read Greece is opening up. England's leader is talking about opening up in July, I think 20th or something. But I can see these people are yet not understood what a crisis the world is facing with COVID-19. They are behaving like little kids trying to get the economy going at the risk of their people dying. And if I look at the 3 biggest countries affected by COVID-19, they are, number 1, United States.
All right.
It has 608,000 people who have died.
All right.
Second highest deaths in the world is in Brazil.
All right.
And Brazil has nearly 540,000 people dead.
Okay.
Third is India at about 410,000. When you know, number 4 is Russia.
Okay.
And number 5 is England. So these are the 5 countries with the most number of COVID deaths. Now, there's something common about these 5 countries.
Okay.
All 5 of these countries at some stage were led or are led by people who denied science, who denied advice on the health emergency, who denied science on the climate emergency.
Okay.
Luckily the US now has a leader in Biden who changed that entire process. But the other 5 countries are yet led by people who ignore science. So when you ignore science, you end up putting economic profit before people. You end up putting economic profit before the planet. So first I want to tell you, because your question is on Costa Rica and sustainable tourism, but I want to give you a global picture of this subject before I go into the potential strategy for tourism. Okay?
Sure.
So that is the first thing. Now, sustainable tourism. So why is sustainable tourism such an important part of the future of tourism? So sustainable tourism is, I believe, is the only tourism the world should have. Because if you have unsustainable tourism, that means you're going to compromise the planet, you're going to compromise the climate emergency, and you will also compromise the health and social emergency. So I believe the future of tourism for any nation with any hopes for future tourism has to be sustainable tourism. So what did Costa Rica do? Number 1, Costa Rica almost 20 years ago decided they are going to focus on sustainable tourism in terms of protecting their environment, protecting their green cover, ensuring that people don't destroy their forest cover, protecting the amazing species that you have in Costa Rica. And they made it law. So in Costa Rica, you can't just go around cutting trees. You can only plant trees.
Okay.
In Costa Rica, there is no army. They closed down the army and put all that money into education.
Okay.
This is a country that sees sustainability as the crucial element in their strategy. Now, what about sustainable tourism for Sri Lanka? So Sri Lanka has almost all the elements that are unique for Costa Rica. In fact, we have more.
All right.
What we have that Costa Rica doesn't have is that we also have a 2,500-year history.
Okay.
So we have all the environmental features that Costa Rica has, almost all, but we have, in addition, 2 or 3 unique features that unfortunately our strategists have never communicated in a focused manner to potential tourists. So what are these things? Number 1, we have a 2,500-year history. Sigiriya should have been one of the 7 wonders of the world. We should have worked very much harder to put it on the 7 wonders of the world list, because having traveled the world, I can tell you, that is the most unique feature we have in Sri Lanka. Number 2, we have the world's 2 biggest mammals in one country. We have the elephant and we have the blue whale. The blue whale is the largest seafaring mammal in the world, and the elephant is the largest land-faring mammal in the world. Yes. We can tell anyone in the world, come to Sri Lanka, experience nature in an unprecedented manner, similar to Costa Rica. But we have 2 features that no other country has. We have the whale and the elephant, which is unique to Sri Lanka. And if Sri Lanka is serious about sustainable tourism, then we have to have a strategy to protect the environment of Sri Lanka. At the moment, we are destroying our environment. Sri Lanka, in the last 10 years or 15 years, have destroyed 84% of all our forest cover. 84%. Wow, 84%. In other words, we have only 16% of forest cover left in Sri Lanka. Okay. That is one of the lowest figures in the whole of Asia. And the world has destroyed 72% of its forest cover, which means they have 28% left. Sri Lanka has destroyed 84%, and we are left with 16%, and we are destroying another 1.2% every year. Oh, okay. So now your question is, can Sri Lanka leverage the same strategy of Costa Rica? Yes. I would say we cannot do that unless we at least stop destroying our natural habitat. Okay. Because sustainable tourism starts with natural habitat. If we don't have natural habitat, then we'll be like Dubai or we'll be like Singapore, and we'll be telling people, come and see the concrete jungle. There'll be nothing natural about Sri Lanka left. So I believe Sri Lanka has a unique opportunity for sustainable tourism. And one of the important things is that sustainable tourism earns 4 times the amount of money that a normal tourist gives. So a normal tourist will bring $50, $70 per night, right? But a sustainable tourist generally spends 5 to 7 days in a location, sometimes 7 to 12 days in a location, and their average spend per night is $250 to $300 a night. So, is it better to bring 1 million normal tourists, or Sri Lanka, I think now is getting about 1.5 million, or 200,000 sustainable tourists will bring more money than 1.5 million normal tourists? So, if Sri Lanka wants to be a profitable tourism destination, it must start with a very clear sustainable tourism strategy. that protects and not destroys the environment, leverages its three unique features of a 2,500-year history, plus the two largest mammals on the planet, and you can experience 3 to 4 different kinds of climatic conditions in one day. In the morning, you can be in Norelia. In the afternoon, you can be in Kandy. And by evening, you can be swimming in Bentota. How many countries in the world can you do that in one day? Very few.
Very
so
true.
I think Sri Lanka's tourism strategists have missed a major opportunity to really create a unique tourism strategy, learning from Costa Rica, etc. But at the moment, I can tell you we are going in the exact opposite direction of sustainable tourism. So I hope that answers your question. You know about tourism much more than me because you've been in working for Aitken Spence Travel and Tourism. So
Yes.
what do you think about what I have told you now? Have you heard these things before?
Actually, no. I mean, you introduced many new things. You actually told Dr. Fernando. So, I mean, it's beyond perfect. I mean, there are a lot of things which we can implement. We are a bit far behind, but we could develop if our tourist leaders work together. Because, I mean, like you're spending the morning in Nuvarelia, you're spending the afternoon in Kandy, and you're having a bath in the Bentota beach in the evening. I mean, within a day, you're doing so many things and you're experiencing different climates. So, I mean, it's
You
perfect.
can see elephants in the morning in Minneria and see whales in the evening in Mirissa. Wow.
Yes. Yes. That's excellent. That's something excellent. I'm sure many people will benefit. And I hope the some tourist leaders as well watch this video. A lot to learn from it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Fernando. So, another question which we wanted to touch was, could you let us briefly know about the Paris Agreement with regard to climate change and how we could practice towards it?
Excellent. So, to talk to you about this subject, I mean, as this is probably the most important subject in my life and it's my passion, I have done a lot of deep study on this subject. So, because one of the things I realized was that many people talk about planting trees, saving the planet, hugging trees. Every second person I come across at a national leader level in the world or a business leader in the world all have some story to say about what they are doing for the planet. And then I began to realize that a majority of these people have not understood the science about the planet. Because for you to be able to impact this issue, you have to start with understanding the science. So without starting to talk about the planet and saving the planet and sustainability and CSR and strategies for the planet, I thought I will first go and study the subject. And I spent nearly 7-8 years in and out of Cambridge University learning the subject. Because what I thought was, before I talk about this subject, I must be absolutely spend time to learn this. And I did that. And I'm happy to tell you, I am yet a student of this subject. Because I know with every passing day, there's something new to learn on this subject. Because if you want to learn this subject, all you have to do every day is to listen to the news and put the weather forecast channel every day at the end of the news. Every day you're getting a lesson in climate emergency and sustainability. So I'm a student of this subject, but I first wanted to get my subject understood. Now you talked about the Paris Agreement.
Yeah.
So let me tell you that long before the Paris Agreement, in 1972, there was a report written called the Limits to Growth. Limits to Growth. And this was a report which was done for the United Nations, which covered how the world's holding capacity, and limitations to economic growth at any cost. That you cannot keep growing and growing and growing. In fact, when you study the subject of economics, there is a famous economist called David Ricardo,
Okay.
and in David Ricardo's theory, he talks about diminishing returns in terms of anything, any item of growth, right? You can't keep growing and growing and growing. After a point, we call it the law of diminishing returns.
Yes.
So limits to growth was explaining this to the world leaders. However, nobody listened to it. Then in 1987, the United Nations now began to realize that the Earth's climate was changing rapidly, and that we were seeing unprecedented changes that we had not seen before.
Okay.
We were experiencing climate events, extreme weather events. So they commissioned what was then known as the Brundtland Report.
Okay.
There's a lady called Gro Brundtland, who was Prime Minister of Norway, and they invited her to set up a team and do a deep study of what is happening to the planet, bearing in mind the concept of limits to growth and the law of diminishing returns of David Ricardo.
Okay.
She presented the report in 1987 to the United Nations titled Our Common Future.
Okay.
And in that report, everything that you and I are experiencing today in terms of climate change, in terms of climate emergency, rising temperatures, health pandemics, destruction of forests, use of fossil fuels was all catalogued in this report.
Okay.
In 1987, zeroed in on what they call is the biggest crisis. And they said the crisis, ladies and gentlemen, is that we are burning fossil fuels, which is petroleum, oil, diesel, natural gas.
Okay.
And this burning of fossil fuels is creating a massive crisis in the planet's atmosphere, because the amount of carbon dioxide these are releasing is getting trapped in the Earth's atmosphere, and the Earth is heating up because of the trapping of carbon dioxide. And one other thing is happening. As the temperatures keep going up, another very sad thing is happening to the planet. So the planet has what we call 3 poles: the North Pole, the South Pole, and the Mid Pole. So the North Pole is known as the Arctic, this Mid Pole is known as the Himalaya mountain range, and the South Pole is the Antarctic. These are sheets of ice, which is basically holding about 3% of the world's fresh water. But these sheets of ice are doing something much more than holding the water, fresh water. It is also reflecting back the sun's heat out of the world. You know that white reflects,
yes,
black absorbs. Okay. Now, as the snow-capped sheets melt, what is happening is we are not reflecting the sun's heat back, we are absorbing the sun's heat. So 2 factors are affecting what I call global warming in an unprecedented manner.
Okay.
So 1987, this report was published, and all the world's leaders were told, we have to stop using fossil fuels and move to renewable energy. Nobody listened to this. No one took any notice. Then came 1988. Professor of the United States NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, made a presentation to the US Congress saying that the 1987 report of Brundtland is very true, and here are more facts and data from my research in the US to confirm that burning of fossil fuels is the problem. No one listened to that. Then came 1992, and they had what is known as the Rio Earth Summit in Brazil.
Okay.
Nobody, 207 leaders of the world, including business leaders and 190 national leaders, all came and made commitments and said, we are going to get rid of fossil fuels in 1992. Nothing happened. In fact, we are burning more fossil fuels than ever before.
Yes.
1997, they had a big event called the Kyoto Protocol in Japan, and once again called nations to stop using fossil fuels. Nobody took it serious. Now you can come to Paris Agreement. I have to give you the whole history before I talk about any topic. As you can see, I don't boom come into the topic without giving you the background. Because if you don't understand the background, you will not understand what is happening now.
Absolutely.
So in 2015, 196 leaders of the world signed to the Paris Agreement. For the first time, they signed a document and said, we are going to give up fossil fuels by 2030, the latest. And we are going to launch the UN Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals. And we want every country to make a commitment to exit fossil fuels. And we are going to monitor this exiting fossil fuels between 2015 and 2020, then again 2020 and 25, and 25 and 30. So 3 5-year blocks.
Yes.
Now, that is bringing you up to speed with what is happening with the Paris Agreement.
Okay.
So the Paris Agreement, the first review happened in December 2020.
Okay.
And what did we see? We saw that from the commitments nations made, which are known as nationally determined commitments, countries are 70% off the target for what they should have achieved in 2020 December. Okay. 70% off the target. That means you have to first achieve the balance 70% we have missed up to 2020, and now achieve 100% of what we have to achieve between 2021 and 2030.
Okay.
And the whole idea of the Paris Agreement was achieve these numbers so that you can somehow ensure the world's planetary heating doesn't cross the 1.5 degrees centigrade barrier. So when we talk about 1.5 degrees centigrade, I must explain that how the world measures this temperature is they take 1880 as the base year when the Industrial Revolution started in the world.
Okay.
So since then only, we started burning more and more fossil fuels in terms of coal-powered engines and coal-powered machines, and even now coal-powered power stations. Mm-hmm. So coal is the most destructive fossil fuel on the planet, because it also creates a lot of health issues. Okay. So what they're talking about is if the temperature achieved in 1880 before the Industrial Revolution is 0, we must make sure between 1880 and 2030, the heat gain, the new heat gain, will be kept under plus 1.5 degrees centigrade. Okay. That was what the UN Paris Agreement was all about. So now I'll give you the bad news. First bad news is the world has missed these targets by 70%. Second bad news is that the last 20 years were the hottest years recorded on the planet in the last million years. Wow. The last 20 years between 2000 and 2021 were the hottest 20 years in the history of planet's temperatures. The third bad news is on the 27th of May this year, the BBC had a news item from the World Meteorological Organization, WMO.
Okay.
And what did they say? They said that we will cross the 1.5 degrees centigrade temperature rise because we were already 1.2 by 2024, 4 years from now.
Okay.
So while the world is trying to keep temperatures below 1 plus 1.5 in 2030, the WMO is saying we are going to cross it in the next 3 years. So that is the third bad news.
Okay.
And I'll give you the fourth bad news. The fourth bad news is the coldest parts of the planet are the Arctic, North Pole, South Pole, Antarctic, and the Mid Pole. We call it the Mid Pole, Himalayas.
Okay.
The Antarctic South Pole registered a temperature this last year of 18.3 degrees centigrade.
Okay.
Plus 18.3 degrees centigrade. Now, that is, if you think that is bad, the Antarctic on the 7th of July, today is the 13th of July, 7th of July, few days back, registered a temperature of plus 45 degrees centigrade.
Okay.
Now, if the coldest parts of the world are registering 45 degrees centigrade and 18 degrees centigrade, that's a bit like you have a fridge in your house and the freezer is supposed to keep everything at 0 degrees centigrade. If the freezer unit gets to 18 degrees and 45 degrees, you know what will happen to everything in your freezer unit. If you have ice cream, you'll have milkshake. If you have meats, you'll have meats that are spoiled. But what is happening in the world is all the ice caps are melting. So our sun's reflective power is going down because we are now not having enough ice sheets to reflect the sun's heat. So we are absorbing it. Number two, all that water is getting melted and coming to the oceans. Now, what is the world report on sea level rise? So in the Paris Agreement, they presented a report called the International Panel for Climate Change Report 2018, 29, then it updated in 2018 and 2020, and also started in 2015. So what do they say? So this report is about 70, 80 pages. I'm going to tell you that in 2 seconds. Okay. What is this report saying? Number one, it is telling us if we cross plus 1.5 degrees centigrade from 1880 base year, the damage to the global economy will be $54 trillion because sea level rise will wipe out many cities in the world, especially the coastal cities of the world, like Shanghai, like Mumbai, like London, Miami, so many of the coastal cities, Florida, all these places will be wiped out. Why? Because you will have a 20-foot sea level rise.
Wow, 20 foot.
Why? Because all the water that is melting from the ice caps are coming to the sea. We already have a 20, 30 centimeter sea level rise. So, while the world is happily going about their business, sea levels are rising without us even knowing about it. And many of the coastal cities, including Colombo, will be dramatically affected as the sea levels rise. The second thing they say in the report is, if temperatures cross 2 degrees centigrade, sea level rise will continue to wipe out global economies to the tune of $67 trillion. And then it says, if temperatures continue to rise and go beyond 3.7 degrees centigrade, so 1.5, 2 degrees, 3.7, they say that we will experience a 140-foot sea level rise that will wipe out the global economies to the tune of $515 trillion. Now, how many world leaders are worried about this? How many world leaders are talking about this? How many world leaders are even mentioning the word sea level rise due to the melting of the ice caps? And ice caps just recorded 45 degrees centigrade plus temperature. Nobody's talking about it. While the world's leaders and the world's people are fighting over petty things about simple issues and ethnic issues and all these issues, the world is going to lose the entire plot because the planet will be all underwater. And all these people who are discussing all these unnecessary issues in the world don't realize the biggest single issue the planet is facing is the climate emergency. So that is now giving you an excellent background and understanding of what is the climate emergency, what is global warming, what is extreme weather incidents. So when the planet keeps rising up in temperatures, we have three kinds of extreme weather incidents. And the World Economic Forum in 2020 and 2021 met in Davos, and they said the two biggest challenges, the biggest risks to the planet are extreme weather and climate action failure. What is extreme weather? Extreme weather is, number one, rising temperatures. Now, I hope I have given you enough evidence that the world's temperatures are going up. So just to give you another fact, Sri Lanka's temperature in 2019 was the highest ever temperature recorded in 140 years.
Wow.
In 2019. In 2020, that figure was surpassed. And in 2021, we have already surpassed the 2020 figure. So Sri Lanka has recorded its highest ever temperature in 140 years. And most countries in the world have recorded highest temperatures in the last 20 years. The 20 years have been the hottest 20 years on the planet. So, number one, extreme weather is temperature rises. Number two, when temperature rises, you end up with droughts. And droughts is the second extreme weather incident. The third extreme weather incident is, as you have extreme temperatures and droughts, all the atmospheric water and the groundwater of the world is getting pulled out of this atmosphere and into the skies. And they end up then becoming very heavy clouds. And these heavy clouds then start raining down on us. And the third extreme weather incident is what we call flooding and unprecedented rainfall, which Sri Lanka has been experiencing in the last 1 month. So you will end up having 6 months rain in 1 hour because all the water is now in the clouds. So these are the three kinds of extreme weather incidents that will completely destroy the Earth's GDP. The global GDP this year is $90 trillion.
Okay.
So if $54 trillion get wiped out, and is that a good part of 60 to 70% of the world's economies will be wiped out if we don't stop using fossil fuels. So are we using less fossil fuels? No. We have started using more fossil fuels. During the pandemic, we used less fossil fuels for a short period, and we dropped the fossil fuel use by about 6% in terms of carbon dioxide. Now we are back on using the same amount. So the world's carbon dioxide level, which is measured in parts per million, have moved up from 1987, 34 years ago, from 280 parts per million to now 417 parts per million. The percentage of greenhouse gases have gone up from 17, 18 gigatons to 34 gigatons of greenhouse gas a year. which is both confirming that for 34 years, world leaders have not exited fossil fuels at all. So the world is staring at what I call a climate catastrophe. But business leaders and world leaders are happily going about their life with business as usual, leadership as usual, and talking and discussing issues which are insignificant compared to the challenges we are really facing. And what I'm trying to do with my masterclass is to get everyone's eyes, mind, energy focused on the real issues the world is faced with, not whether Black Lives Matter or whether the Americans or the Chinese are going to become the superpower or whether the Russians are going to take over Ukraine. These are not the issues, Michael.
Yes.
The real issue is we are now fighting for the survival of humanity in the planet. Because 20-foot sea level rise, it happened in Sri Lanka during the tsunami.
Correct.
The only difference is 20-foot sea level rise came up for 3 seconds and went back. Now think of 20-foot sea level rise remaining all over the world. There will be no Mumbai, there will be no Shanghai, there will be no London, there will be no Colombo. We will all be underwater because sea level rise is happening as we speak. So what should world leaders do if we are serious about saving this planet? What we should be doing is in the next 3 to 5 years, stopping the use of fossil fuels like coal, like natural gas, like petrol and diesel, and move to renewable energy sources like solar, wind, battery, even nuclear energy. It doesn't matter. Clean energy that does not heat the planet. That is the issue. The problem we have is the planet is heating. So I am trying to focus leaders' minds on the real issues, not whether all these other insignificant issues are the big issues. They're not the big issues. So I want to illustrate this with a bit of a joke.
Okay.
Because sometimes people understand these jokes better than reality.
Yeah.
So just imagine that 7.9 billion people on the planet are all on one flight, one big plane called Earth ship. This Earth ship is now beginning to face unprecedented climate emergencies in the form of warming of the planet and the heating of the planet due to burning fossil fuels. Now, there are some people in this flight sitting in the first class cabin, maybe about 0.1% of the richest people on the planet, maybe the people like Richard Branson and Elon Musk and Warren Buffett. There are about 8 people in the planet who are billionaires and trillionaires. They are all sitting in first class. And maybe they are thinking, if this Earth ship gets destroyed, we can take our own spaceship and leave the planet, go out of planet like Galactica, Virgin Galactica did recently. So we will escape from Earth and stay in space because they have all the money to do that. Then, in the business class, you have all the world leaders who are the G20 world leaders and business leaders who have a lot of money, who are thinking, we are from Europe, we are from America, and we are going to escape this problem. Only the people in the southern hemisphere nations of Asia, Africa, and the Middle East are going to get drowned when the sea level comes up. We are going to be fine. So we are going to happily sit in business class and enjoy life, knowing that 70% of the world's population are at risk with sea level rise. Then you have everyone else sitting in the economy seat. So about 7.85 billion people are sitting in economy. About 0.01% are sitting in first class. And about 3% are sitting in the business class.
Yes.
Now, when the Earth ship gets wiped out by the heat and the rising waters, whether you sat in first class or whether you sat in business class or whether you sat in economy class, all 7.8 billion people are going to suffer and going to basically get wiped out. No one is going to say Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos sat in first class and died. The leaders of Europe and the developed countries, G20 countries, Japan, Korea, and all these people sat in business class and died, and everybody else died in economy class. Everyone is going to get smashed down, and no one is going to be able to find pieces of the people who died. So the message I'm trying to give from this illustration is the world needs to realize that all 7.9 billion people are under threat, and all 7.9 billion people will suffer equally, and not think that just because you have the money, just because you're in a developed world, that you're going to escape the attack that the climate emergency is going to come with. Which means all world leaders, all business leaders must get together and work together to solve the climate emergency, and not treat the climate emergency as if it was just another normal day in the park. You know, why do we have ECUs in hospital, emergency care units? Why do we have ICUs in hospital? Why? To treat emergency patients different to the normal patients. We have a climate emergency, and we are treating this climate emergency in terms of world leaders and business leaders like it's just another normal patient. We are keeping all the emergency patients in the waiting room and giving them a number and saying, we will treat you as and when we can. Rubbish. The emergency patients should be treated like they are emergency patients and taken into the emergency unit. And we should bring all the doctors of the world to treat the emergency patients first. We are treating our climate emergency as if it was some joke, and we will all suffer the consequences of that, every single one of us. Sri Lanka's temperature is going up, sea levels are rising, all the economies of the world will be destroyed in the same way. They say it's only when London, Miami, Shanghai get completely wiped out and underwater that world leaders will wake up. But then they will wake up too late. So my message to anyone watching this program is, don't treat the climate emergency as though it was not an emergency. What can you and I do to stop this emergency? What can we do? Number one, we can all start looking at going towards solar energy for our own electricity. Number two, instead of driving diesel vehicles and petrol vehicles, we can at least start driving a hybrid vehicle. We can all start planting some trees. We can all stop eating meat and start eating more healthy food, because the more meat you eat, the more forests will be covered for that sector.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So every one of us, there are things we can do, and world leaders and national leaders must get on a war footing on the climate emergency, not keep thinking that there's going to be World War III and start building more and more weapons for a world war that will never happen, when the real war we are about to get wiped out by is the climate war. We are putting $5.2 trillion every year to subsidize fossil fuels in the world, to make fossil fuels cheaper. Now, the fossil fuel burning is the problem,
Yes.
but we are trying to make it cheaper for people. That's a bit like saying sugar is bad and it is going to give you diabetes.
Yes.
But we are going to make the price of sugar 25% less, so more people can eat sugar and more people can have diabetes. So the world's leaders have to do two things. Business leaders have to do two things. You and I have to do two things. Number
Yes.
one, we must exit fossil fuels. Number one. We can't keep playing with fossil fuels and not expect the planet to get destroyed. Because we are at 1.2 degrees centigrade and 1.5 will cross in 2024-25 as per the World Meteorological Department. So there is no question of waiting. We have to do this fast. Number two, we have to stop subsidizing fossil fuels.
Absolutely.
When I listen to leaders in the G20 and the UN talking about how serious the climate emergency is, and then going and putting $5 trillion to subsidize it. It's talking from both sides of the mouth. One side they're saying we must save the planet. The other side they're saying we must subsidize fossil fuels. You can't do both. You have to do one. So that is the big story about the Paris Agreement. And that is why it prompted me to create this course, because I thought I will do what I can to create leaders who understand the reality of the climate emergency.
Excellent. Brilliant insights, Dr. Fernando. Actually, you covered some of the other questions also because you explained it so well and very clearly. And you covered what we should do and what people are doing and how the leaders should act. I mean, you covered, I had a few questions, but you covered that all well. So, I mean, we really appreciate Dr. Fernando. I mean, the passion which you show in doing this, and a lot of people will be benefited. I'm sure not only in Sri Lanka, but you're gone on the international level, and you're doing a great service. I mean, actually, Sri Lanka is very proud to have you. And actually, at Ceylon Institute of English and Leadership, we're so honored to have you actually to do this interview and especially this discussion with us. Thank you so much. And just one final question. What is a message that you can give for people who need motivation and all the go-getters from a well-experienced person like you?
Okay. So I hope the two messages I gave national leaders and business leaders will resonate well. And I hope any business leader running any company in the world or Sri Lanka who hears what I said will understand there is no waiting anymore, and that they will be destroyed simply because they're sitting in business class. They are not going to escape it, okay? And world leaders are all going to get wiped out too. So I hope that message went out. And the two big messages for that lot is exit fossil fuels in the next 3 to 5 years. Stop using coal power, move to solar power and wind power. Stop using diesel vehicles, move to hybrid or electrics. And number one, exit fossil fuels. Number two, stop subsidizing fossil fuels. Okay, now I want to talk to all the young people who want to create a career for themselves and to use what I call talent. So I come from a belief that every single human being on this planet, every single human, black, white, red, pink, yellow, Chinese, Japanese, Indian, Asian, African, and I have worked in 4 continents of the world. So I have met these people. every single one of the 7.9 billion people of this world are blessed with a talent. There is nobody born in this world who doesn't have a talent. So first word of encouragement to everyone listening to this is that none of you have any less talent than somebody else. All of you are equally blessed with talent, because I believe that there is a God above there who gives every single one of us a talent. Now, the question is, what are you going to do to find out what is that talent? And how are you going to put your time and energy to make that talent that you are individually blessed with more than anyone else, and turn that into an opportunity to create great impact in the world? So the second big message to everyone is spend time and try to figure out what is that unique talent you have been blessed with. And I can tell you, there's no one in the planet with no talent. Question is, some people take the trouble to find that talent. Sometimes they find the talent and do nothing about it. They just bury the talent under a tree. Some people put some water and make the talent grow. And that talent then becomes a globally impacting talent, because that is the purpose you were given the talent, not for you to keep it under a tree or under a chair or under a table. It was shine out to impact the world. Now, the third key message I want to give everyone is that none of us are born any superior to anyone else. Whatever race, whatever religion, whatever ethnicity you belong to, we are all equal. No one is more important and less important than someone else. And I learned that as a very young boy, because my dad taught me that lesson very, very aggressively. Because he would let us not even use harsh language to anybody who was doing any work for us in our home or anywhere. He would sometimes take me to a side and give me a caning because I used bad language to someone who was in our home. Okay? He used to always say, love these people, all of these are equal. These people are only little unfortunate. That's why they are helping us. The other key lesson he taught me was, we don't have different races in Sri Lanka. Every ethnicity is equal. There are no Sinhalese, Tamils, Hindus, Burghers, Muslims. We have one humanity. And the blood of all these people is red. Love them all equally. And I have practiced that in my life.
Excellent.
Every time. Every time. Even when I was married, my best man was a Tamil gent.
Okay.
And some of my very best friends in Sri Lanka and the world are people from the Muslim community. Why? Because I don't consider myself any superior or any less. Because I consider myself a human being living in Sri Lanka, which is our motherland. And we should all love Sri Lanka, because we were not given a choice as to where we were born, right?
Definitely.
We were born there.
Definitely.
Now we must love that country with all our heart and all our might, and love everyone equally in that country. So if you have a talent, make sure that you also love everyone around you. You cannot treat people differently. You cannot even talk about people differently. And I embrace every Sri Lankan, wherever I meet them. And I always celebrate the amazing talents that Sri Lanka has produced on the world stage from all the ethnicities of Sri Lanka. Because I am truly proud of the hardworking Tamil people, the hardworking Muslim people, the hardworking Sinhalese people who think beyond race and ethnicity. Because to me, those are the real heroes of this country. People who would have no time for any racial prejudice. So the next thing is that invest your time. Now, I can tell you, you read a whole number of qualifications and degrees that I have done.
Yes.
I have never had the luxury of studying full-time in any university in the world. I have studied in the best university in the world, in Cambridge University and Columbia University, and I have studied in the best business school in the world. Because INSEAD is the world's #1 business school, and I'm proud to say I teach. But I never had the luxury of studying full-time in any university. You know why? Because we as a family were too poor to be able for me to go and do any studies full-time. And every time I studied, I always was working simultaneously. And the key point I want to make is lots of people give excuses. We are poor. We cannot afford it. We cannot go to university full-time. We have so many challenges in our lives. I can tell you, I have had every single challenge that every single human being can ever have in their life. Financially and in every way. But I have found the time. I have invested my time. I have found a way to balance all these things and to go to the best universities in the world. And I'm not the brightest student in the world. But when you focus your mind and energy and heart to go to the best universities in the world and learn, doors will open. Doors will open and doors open. Same doors will be open for everyone. So once you find your talent, now get qualified. Because no one is going to listen to you if you are not someone who has the credibility of qualifications and learning behind it. But be humble enough to know that even if you have all the doctorates and the PhDs and the degrees in the world, that you really don't know much. Because every day, some new knowledge is coming up. So have an attitude of continuous learning, not learning and saying, now I know everything. In fact, the people who say, now I know everything, are the most dangerous people in the planet.
Sure.
Because every day, I learn something new. So the third thing is get qualified, but now get qualified and start using your talent to impact the world in a positive manner. And always remember there's something new to learn. So my advice to these young people is, #1, don't think you don't have talent. You have a talent. Identify it. Invest time and energy and get qualified. Don't go for second best in your qualifications. Find a way to get yourself educated, because education teaches you much more about how to live with everyone in peace and harmony than all the qualifications that you can get.
Sure.
And if after learning all this, if you can't get on with everyone in the planet and every ethnicity and respect everyone and have no biases, then your education is useless. You might as well throw the education in the sea, because what it's really telling me is all this education didn't change you to be able to realize every human being is equal.
Sure.
No two human beings are to be looked at differently, with different eyes, right? Love everyone. You cannot love only the people in your ethnicity or your group. If you can't love everyone, your education is useless. So get qualified, impact the world, however small Sri Lanka is. If you have a talent, if you have invested time and energy, to take that talent and get credibility in the world stage, you can begin to impact the world with that talent. You can make a difference, even in the most developed nations in the world, because they will see that you are offering and you are doing something different. So these are my final words of encouragement to everyone. And never ever underestimate yourself. I'm not saying that you have to be proud. I'm not saying that you have to be arrogant. Because one of the things that education must do is to make you humble. Humility is the true sign of an educated person. It is not arrogance. So get educated, be humble, and always remember there's something new to learn every minute of every day. You never will ever know everything, and accept the fact there are others who will know a lot more than you will ever know. But believe that you have something special and unique and take it to the world.
Superb. Excellent, Dr. Fernando. Thank you so much. I mean, excellent interview, and I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy it, and our students especially. So thank you very much once again for taking time. And in a few months' time, we hope to do another wonderful discussion with you.
All the best, Watson, for your institute and for yourself. I wish you all the very best in your personal journey. You have taken some very bold decisions to create your own space and you create your own institute. Now make it unique, make it globally competitive, and offer something that all the other institutes don't offer, and make them relevant leaders for the future, and make yourself a relevant leader for the future. And if anyone in your institute or you want any support that I can give, I'm very happy to give that. And I will do so with a lot of sincerity. All the best.
Thank
and
you.
Have a wonderful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fernando, and all the best to you too.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.